Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, brought to you by Horse Racing Nation and Derby Wars. I'm Brian Zipse, and as always, I'm joined by one of the best handicappers I've ever known, Matt Shifman. How are you, Matt?
I'm great. Thank you for that introduction, and it's exciting Thursday because it's 1 week before the Breeders Cup.
That's right. We're going to talk Breeders Cup in a little bit. Matt, we couldn't do the show without the great help we get from Louisville. Say hello to Ember.
Hi, Ember.
Matt, let's jump right into last week's exciting racing. The big day over at Ascot, British Champions Day. I think the highlight of the card was the Champion Stakes, and we saw quite a performance from a famous sibling of a famous horse, Noble Mission, winning the Champion Stakes, an exciting stretch drive over Al Kazim. Let's go to that videotape.
Is pushed along. Al Kazim travelling really strongly. Cirrus de Ziegler under quite a bit of pressure. Petters Moon's path was blocked, then Free Eagle. It is out in front, Noble Mission, with Al Kazim hunting down the leader. Cirrus de Ziegler's paddling back in the field. Free Eagle trying to get organised and launch a challenge at the front pair. Noble Mission on the far side. Al Kazim on the near side. Free Eagle is trying to breach the gap. Has 3 lengths to find. Noble Mission digging in. Al Kazim drawing alongside. Head for head, the Champion Stakes in the balance. Noble Mission clinging on narrowly. Noble Mission from Al Kazim, all out. Noble Mission has won the Champion Stakes.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. That was an amazing stretch drive with Noble Mission on the lead, going down that big long stretch, and Al Kazim coming at him, and Noble Mission just was so super tough and determined. That was really, really exciting.
Yeah, for a long time, Matt, he's had the stigma of being Frankel's little full brother. No stigma anymore. For my money, his 2014 is just about as good as any horse in Europe. Calling him the best turf horse in the world right now is not a stretch. Good for Frankel's little brother.
Yeah, congratulations, and another feather in the breeding shed for the mother of those two. Both of those are her 2 foals by Galileo, and wow, they've been amazing.
She's been a kind mare, to say the least, hasn't she, Matt?
Yeah, good one, Brian.
Back in the States, we had a huge performance at Keeneland on Saturday. This is a filly I've liked all along. Her name is Terrace. She threw in a clunker this spring in her first try outside of the sprint team distance, but she's come back gangbusters with a nice return win. And then what she did at Keeneland was huge, Matt.
Oh, that was just an absolutely tremendous performance with a 21 quarter and a 44 half and a 108-ish 3/4. She just gate to wire. She just blew that field away. I just wish she was coming to California.
Yeah, they're not going to push her too much. Terrace is going to skip the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. But what you didn't see behind her was a big field, and it was a Grade 2 race at Keeneland, the Raven Run. But it was those were some serious Grade 2 fillies behind her. There's some good talent in there. For her to do that, I think it's opening the eyes of everyone that she is the real deal as a female sprinter.
Yeah. 9-length victory, a 110 buyer figure for the filly and mare race. That's big.
That's big, and in fact, it was big enough, despite all the big turf racing north of the border, over in England. She's that star of the week, Terrace.
Rightly so.
I mentioned north of the border. Of course, they had one of their big days of racing at Woodbine. This was on Sunday, and they had the E.P. Taylor, in the Arctic Euro domination, Matt, and the Canadian. The biggest one was the Pattison Canadian International. And the Euros just swept the day. This one was Hillstar taking it over Big Blue Kitten. And my old friend, the pizza man, just got caught for third after leading into the stretch.
Yeah, that was a tremendous move that Hillstar made there. And I love the way the track announcer described the move. He said that Hillstar was shot out of a cannon.
Shot out of a cannon. And, he was the recipient of a 7-length beating earlier this year in England by a horse we might mention later, Telescope. So if Hillstar looks that good in the Canadian International, beating one of our best distance horses on the turf, Big Blue Kitten, think how good Telescope might be.
Yeah, it was a terrific ride by the jockey there. Kept that horse covered up all the way around. Got to the turn, got to the stretch, swung the horse out, and easy winning move there. It was really impressive.
Yeah, the race was over before they hit the wire, that's for sure. Hillstar, the winner of the Canadian International. Hey, Matt, it's time. We've talked about some races last week. We need to know, everyone wants to know, who is Matt's stud of the week?
Stud of the week. We're gonna move off the path we've been so far, and we're gonna go to Maryland for the stallion Not for Love. Not for Love has been standing in Maryland for years and years, and Not for Love has been the leading non-Kentucky based sire in our country for 8 consecutive years. And you might say, oh, big deal, but each of those years his progeny have earned over $4 million. His horses dominate in the Maryland Million. They've won 36 Maryland Million races over the years, and just in this year alone at the Maryland Million this past weekend, 4 of the races were won by the kin of Not for Love.
Yeah, Not for Love is on quite a roll, Matt. I remember him as a runner, a nice runner, but what he's done for Maryland breeding the last several years has been impressive, to say the least. Of course, his biggest winner on Saturday was 8 Too Fast to Catch, winning his third Maryland Million race in the Classic. So good choice, Not for Love. It seems like in Maryland he has no problem finding love.
Well, with his pedigree, why not?
Why not? He's lived up to everything he could possibly have hoped for when they retired him. All right, we're going to go right into our top 10. We want to get to this Breeders' Cup, but we're going to start with a little top 10 of the best jockeys of the Breeders' Cup. We're going back all 30 years, Matt. We want to know, we want to tell our viewers who have been the best jockeys at the Breeders' Cup, and I would love for you to start us off with number 10.
Number 10 is Corey Nakatani. Corey Nakatani has won 10 Breeders' Cup races in his career, and he kind of specializes in the sprints, although not exclusively. He's won 5 of those Breeders' Cup races in sprints.
He's not a bad little golfer, too, Matt. I don't know if you knew that. I'm going to jump to number 9. I'm going to go with the gentleman who's had more Breeders' Cup starters than any other jockey. Of course, I'm talking about Johnny V, John Velasquez. He's closing in on becoming the 5th Breeders' Cup jockey to win at least $20 million in earnings. Pretty sure he'll get that mark in front of us next week. Interestingly about Johnny V, his last 3 winners, I don't know if you knew this, Matt, his last 3 winners have come on the turf. He rode the first of Wise Dance 2, and he also had Stephanie's Kitten in the Juvenile Fillies, and he pulled off that surprise in the Filly and Mare Turf a couple years ago with Perfect Shirl. So his last 3 winners are on grass.
Yeah, Johnny V can ride good horses in any kind of race. Let's go to number 8. Let's get a European in here. Ryan Moore, who has won 6 Breeders' Cup races in just 6 years. And all of his, not surprisingly, have come on the turf. And he's winning at a very high percent, a very high 22% in, which isn't unusual on a day-to-day basis, but in the Breeders' Cup, that's an amazing number.
Yeah, that's saying something, and he might not be quite as well known over here as some European riders, but he's just about as good as anybody the last, as you said, the last 6 years over here at least. Number 7. Number 7's a popular rider. He's not riding right now, but I think he's coming back soon. And of course, we all know him from the one great comeback he already made. That's Gary Stevens. Gary Stevens, Matt, has won 10 Breeders' Cup races. And boy, did he return in 2013 with a vengeance. Riding Beholder on Friday to a Breeders' Cup Distaff win, and then getting that memorable win in the Classic aboard Mucho Macho Man. For that, Gary Stevens is our number 7.
Yes, he's certainly a fan favorite. Number 6, whose trademark flying dismount, Frankie Dettori. Frankie Dettori has won 10 Breeders' Cup races, and they weren't all on the turf. He's actually won a Classic. He won the Classic with Ravens Pass, and in addition to that, of course, he's had 4 wins in the Breeders' Cup turf. He also got to ride Ouija board in one of her great races.
You know, I used to do a flying dismount out of my Hyundai Sonata, but my wife asked me not to do that anymore. So I have that in common with the Tory. Number 5. It's a good thing, actually. Yeah. Number 5. How about Garrett Gomez? We haven't seen him for a few years, but Garrett Gomez has ridden 13 Breeders' Cup winners, Matt. That's the 3rd most, and he's done it with only 83 starters. So of the guys at the top of the list, he has as good a percentage as anyone. He won, of course, 2 straight Breeders' Cup sprints with Midnight Loot, and he was aboard that famous Breeders' Cup Classic race. He was aboard Blame, and I think he gave him a heck of a good ride to get to the wire ahead of the oncoming Zenyatta.
Let's go to number 4 and Chris McCarron. Chris McCarron has 5 Breeders' Cup wins in his career, but hey, when the big race came up, there's nobody better than Chris McCarron. He has 5 Classic wins out of his 9. Alysheba, Sunday Silence, twice with Tisnow, and Alphabet Soup.
Yeah, Matt, I think you meant to say 9 total winners. So 5 of his 9 have been in the Classic. Pretty amazing. If you look over my right shoulder here, you're going to see Chris McCarron edging out Pat Day. And guess who's my number 3 Breeders' Cup jockey? Pat Day. Pat Day, despite not having ridden for the last 9 Breeders' Cups, is still 2nd on the earnings list. He's ridden a total of 12 winners. 4 of them were Classic winners. Of course, he rode that famous battle in the first Classic with Wild Again. He had 2 straight winners with Awesome Again and Cat Thief, and he was also aboard Unbridled to Breeders' Cup Classic victory. I think he would have liked to have won the one behind me, though, maybe most of all.
He was a super competitor. Number 2 is one of my personal favorites. If I had to list my favorite jockeys of all time, this guy would be right at the top, and that's Jerry Bailey. Jerry Bailey had, in his career, 15 Breeders' Cup wins. I think I said that right this time. And he also had 5 Classic winners also. And what's neat about Jerry Bailey's Breeders' Cup career, his very, very last mount in the Breeders' Cup was one of his Classic winners, his last Classic win with St. Liam.
St. Liam coming from the outside post on that funny post position, that funny gate position at Belmont. Interesting. Okay, number 1. I don't think there's a lot of drama here. You mentioned Jerry Bailey, 2nd on the all-time list with 15 winners. How about Mike Smith? Mike Smith has 20 winners. 20 winners for Mike Smith. He's ridden some biggies. Let me name just a few. Azeri, Lure, Misdirection, Royal Delta, Skip Away. He won 3 Breeders' Cup races last year alone. And of course, last but not least on his highlights of wins was Zenyatta. Let's go to the videotape.
Zenyatta, if she wins this, she'll be a super horse. She's starting to pick them off, though. Zenyatta going to hook to the outside. Meanwhile, it's Colonel John. Summerbird in the red cap. And Zenyatta's come to the outside. Zenyatta coming flying on the grandstand side. Gio Ponti on the inside. Summerbird is right there. This is unbelievable. Zenyatta, what a performance. One wheel impossible.
Matt, let's jump right into the Breeders' Cup. Everybody wants to talk Breeders' Cup. The pre-entries came out yesterday, fresh off the printer, and we got 201 horses pre-entered for the 2014 Breeders' Cup. I can't wait.
Yeah, when I saw the 201 entries and 29 pre-entered in races and 21, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a daunting task. But I think we both took a quick look in the last 24 hours and maybe have some little tidbits to share.
Absolutely, Matt. Yeah, we're going to do a lot more handicapping. It's the best homework in the world to handicap the Breeders' Cup races. But for now, let's just take a quick look at each race. Let's start with the Breeders' Cup Classic. And you know what? I'm just amazed by these 3-year-olds. Toneless, Toast of New York, VE Day, Bayern, Candy Boy, California Chrome. Who am I forgetting? The 3-year-olds really might have a stranglehold on this race.
Well, I tell you what, it's a pretty tough field, and we got some legitimate speed on the front end. There are 9 millionaires in that race, 8 Grade 1 winners in that race. That's a tough field. That is going to be a heck of a race to close things down on Saturday.
Great race. The one horse that popped out to me that I wasn't really thinking about too much is Cigar Street. Although he's lightly raced, he has the look kind of a macho man to me. Could be a big talent. Do you like his chances, Matt?
Well, I do like his chances, and it's going to be interesting to see how the jockey rides him in there. I don't think he can go up front with those other horses. He's going to have to sit back, and he has done it in the past, but he's going to have to sit back a little bit. And you know, he's trained by Bill Mott, and Bill Mott has sprung some amazing upsets in the Classic. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at him.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be in the first flight off that speed, that quite a bit of speed that you talked about, and so will be the race favorite. I think we've got the latest win on the unbeaten, perfect career, the champion, Shared Belief. I think he's a deserving favorite, don't you, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. You got to beat him before you can knock him.
There you go. All right, there goes the Classic. How about the Distaff? What do we got? We lost Beholder.
But we got a good field. We got a field in this Breeders' Cup, or you can say we got a field of only 12 because that's small compared to the pre-entries in most of them. And the horse that's, that maybe is below the obvious choices that I'm a little interested in, and it's going to depend on how that track is playing. But if we see on Distaff Day that track is playing towards speed, I'm a little interested in Belle Galante. I know maybe not the quality of the others, but she's beaten some good horses, and she's tough on the lead. So that's my interesting horse in the Distaff. What about you, Brian?
Matt, I don't like Belle Galante at all. I'm sorry. I think she wins races when she gets alone on the lead, and I don't see that happening in this year's Distaff. I wish I had some odds to give you here, but I think the race is probably going to boil down to untappable or close hatches. The one horse that interests me, maybe a little bit of the others, is actually Tis Midnight. I think she ran a very good race to Beholder last time, and she might be just improving leaps and bounds at the right time to step in.
Okay.
That's the Distaff. Matt, why don't you start us off with the Turf?
Yeah, wow. The field that pre-entered the Turf turned out to be way, way tougher than what we were thinking the field was going to be maybe just 2 or 3 days ago. With the addition of Brown Panther, after he wasn't able to get in the gate up in Canada with some antics, now we got that horse coming to the Breeders' Cup. That horse is going to be super, super difficult. Just the Judge coming from his win in Canada, Secret Gesture, along with all the other horses that we knew were going to come. This Turf field got a lot tougher for my main sequence.
Yeah, it seems like the Turf had some lean years there a little bit in the past 5 or 6, but this one's a full field. How do you not root for Hardest Core, Matt? What a story. It's come from certainly rags to riches. Yep. Won the million like a real good thing. Hasn't run since, just getting ready for this. The Europeans look tough to me. Telescope I've already talked about. Flintshire. there's just a bunch of good ones. Even the filly Chiquita might be one to really watch. But wouldn't it be nice to see Hardest Core? And I think there's a chance that he's good enough here.
I agree with you. The Euros, the 7 Euros in here look super tough. I'm going to disagree. I don't like Hardest Core.
Oh, you got me back. That's the turf. All right, let's go right into the mile. The mile is Sands Goldakova, Sands Wise Dan. For the first time in 6 years, we won't see one of those two great milers, one of the two in the mile. But you know what we have? We have a wide open and a deep field. I'm not sure, but I think it was about 25 that pre-entered. I like about 9 of them, Matt. The one that, it should be a fun race to bet. The one I'm looking at the most, I'm not sure how much he's going to be bet. He may be one of the favorites, but Tom's Tribute just seems to have taken it up a notch the last 6 months or so. Lightly raced last year. Is he good enough? Has he gotten good enough in California to win this thing?
I don't know. Like you were saying, Toronado's awfully tough. The other Europeans are tough. That red hot David Simcock is bringing his horses that did so well in Canada to the Breeders' Cup, including Trade Storm, who was super impressive in the Woodbine Mile. You're going to have a perfect trip to win that race, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting race. Like we said, a good betting affair. I think there are other Euros that are even better than the Woodbine Mile Trade Storm, Woodbine Mile winner. Some of these 3-year-olds are very interesting. If they come over and take to Santa Anita, it might offer some real value. I'm going to butcher these names, Matt, but Karakantai and Mustajib, those two especially, look very consistent over in Europe and might be 10, 15 to 1 over here. And I look for them to possibly run a big race.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one.
That's the mile. Speaking of another good field, another good deep field, how about the Juvenile? We're going to see some of the early Kentucky Derby favorites in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Who's your horse, man?
Yeah, well, it's shaping up to be a battle of the juvenile training experts. On a first glance, it looks like a battle between Baffert and Pletcher. Baffert's got American Pharaoh, and Pletcher's got Carpe Diem and Daredevil. It's going to be tough for the winner to not come from those two trainers.
Yeah, all 3 of them look good. I think American Pharaoh will be the deserving favorite. He's done it at the distance. He's done it out in California. Who knows how good both of the Pletcher ones you mentioned. But there's a bunch of other interesting horses in here. Texas Red, Calculator. I'm even looking at the Sapling winner, Super Colossal. I still think he might be any kind. And I tell you what, Matt, it's been a while since a European has won the Juvenile, but a couple Euros in this race.
I'm with you on that. I got it written in my notes. Aidan O'Brien, who is a Mr. Breeders' Cup, he's got 2 entered in the Juvenile, and as we know, he has won the Juvenile before. If we go back to Johannesburg, so I'd keep my eye on those O'Brien runners too.
Yeah, so I'm thinking the Juvenile is more than just the favorites in here. Sure, American Pharaoh or one of the Pletchers might win, but there's some interesting prospects. Yeah, O'Brien won his first Breeders' Cup with Johannesburg, so these Euros of his look interesting at least. That's the Juvenile. Let's jump down to the Sprint 6 furlongs. They're going to go fast, Matt. Who's going to go fastest?
Well, there's definitely going to be horses going fast and faster and fastest. I think the big question is, can Rich Tapestry repeat that performance and make another big move and get the win here in the Breeders' Cup? I think he's going to have the pace in front of him, but let's see what happens.
I generally don't like to jump on the Euro second time after, or he's not a Euro, he's from Hong Kong. But usually I don't like to jump on the foreign horses in their second start after a big win. So I'm going to try to beat him. I don't mind if he's the favorite. Secret Circle, I think, should move forward a little bit after needing that race a little bit. What about Baffert's other horse? This is not my style, but Indianapolis looks like an interesting prospect off of only 3 races. If a horse this lightly raced is to win against older horses in the Breeders' Cup, I think the Sprint is a good place to do it.
And Baffert training would be who you'd want also.
Agreed. Indianapolis maybe, but again, a lot of big field, work all week. My Illinois bred, a lot of horses could win this one. That's the sprint. How about the juvenile fillies, Matt?
Yeah, only 15 pre-entered for this one, Brian. So I don't know what happened there, but again, I'm looking at a Bill Mott here, and I'm just a little curious with I don't know, is it pronounced Puka? I assume for Bill Mott, who broke his maiden by 16 lengths in a pretty nice time last time. So that's one that first time through the PPs caught my eye.
Puka for Bill Mott, yeah, 16 length. That was against maidens, so
Yes.
she'll have to move up.
Yep.
But unlike the Colts, I don't see a ton of a form here that looks overwhelming, at least. I like a filly in here who I'm hoping to get big odds on. I like Dirk Keeneland in the Alcibiades. Her name is Top Decile. She ran a good race. Came out of the gate a little bit slow and was second in the Alcibiades that day. I have high hopes for her. It's tough to go out to California and win, but I'm going to have a little bit money on Al Stall's Top Decile in the juvenile fillies.
You love the Al Stalls.
Sometimes I do. How about we go back to the older boys? And we got Golden Sense topping the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and he's looking for back-to-back Dirt Mile wins, Matt.
Yeah, he's one of the horses in this year's fields who's trying to defend a Breeders' Cup title. Again, we'll see what happens. I mean, he's been right there in every race. His trainer isn't there. He's running for the assistant trainer. Does that make a difference? I don't think so. But the horse that I'm interested to see in this field is Tapiture.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I like the horse. I've always liked the horse. So I think that's an interesting spot to put that horse in by Asmussen.
Yeah, I think you covered exactly what I wanted to say. I think Golden Sense is one of the best bets of the whole two-day Breeders' Cup experience. He's going to be low, though. He's going to be the favorite, but he looks really tough to me. If he runs his race, and he usually does, I'm not sure anybody can beat him in here. But of the rest, the one that interests me the most is the good 3-year-old, who I think probably likes 8 or 9 furlongs better than 10 furlongs, and that's Tapiture. So I'm with you, Matt. That's the Dirt Mile. Oh, look at this filly and mare turf field, Matt. We got another full field of good fillies.
We sure do, and I don't know if we're a little surprised. Dank is back to defend her title from the filly and mare turf. And last year, she was one of the most impressive winners of the meeting. And for me, going into the race, she was a horse that I was willing to single in the Breeders' Cup card, which is hard to do. She's coming in with what looks like maybe her form isn't quite as good as it was, but her last 2 races have been against the boys, if I'm not mistaken, and that wasn't the case last year. So let's not be quick to assume that Dank is not the horse that she was last year. We got 5 million in the millionaires in the race. We got €8 in the race. I think you mentioned some of them earlier that were cross-entered with Chiquita. So what are you thinking there?
I'm Eurocentric in this one, Matt. You mentioned Dank. Yeah, she ran against the boys twice, two tough races. Yep. She didn't get the money either day. The thing about Dank, she's been off for a while. It's been since the summer since she's run. So there is a question, but Sir Michael Stout, he has him ready, and it would be a surprise not to see Dank at least run well. But in Tarfasha and in possibly Chiquita, she's first preference in the turf. Just the Judge, whose first preference is in this race. You got some very good Euros. Of the Americans, Stephanie's Kitten's a maybe for me. Emollient ran well. The horse that she beat last time, Paranda, is a nice-looking filly. But honestly, I would almost go so far as say I'd be surprised if this wasn't won by a European.
Yeah, I think the Euros have a big edge in this one.
That's the filly and mare turf. All right, we're going to go stick with the filly and mares, but we're going to drop it down to the sprint distance. And I think this is another interesting field with an interesting story on Midnight Lucky. She's won one race this year. It was gigantic, but it was 6 months ago. Can she come back again and beat these horses in the Breeders' Cup?
Well, again, it's Baffert, and if anybody can bring him back in a sprint, he's the guy that can do it. But this is certainly not an easy field. You got Artemis Artaragero in there, and we don't know what race she's going to run. Is she going to be on the lead in this race? Is she going to be coming off the pace like she did in her last race? She's a good one. We got a horse I know you and I have a soft spot for, and that's Sweet Reason, who we both like a lot, and our old friend Judy the Beauty. It's a good field.
Yeah, I think for the money, because I think Midnight Lucky is going to be the favorite. She's probably the most talented horse in the race, but I think it's worth a shot to try to beat her. Those 3-year-olds are good. Artemis Agritera, you mentioned. Stone-tastic, I think, is a real big talent. How good has Leah Court gotten? If there is a ton of speed, though, Judy the Beauty's done well at Santa Anita too.
Yep.
You mentioned her. But if there is a ton of speed, which there should be, at 7 furlongs, I'm thinking Sweet Reason may be the one I gravitate towards, and I've done it a bunch over the last year, and she hasn't let me down too many times. If they run 40, 43-4, 44, 44-1, which could happen in this race at 7 furlongs, look for her to be flying at the end, which I'll be happy with.
Yeah, Sweet Reason has been good to us.
That's the filly and mare sprint. Let's stick with the sprinters and take to the turf. The Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I think they had 80 pre-entries, Matt. Is that right?
Talk about a race that's wide open. Aside from the fact that there were 29 pre-entries, aside from that, this is a wide open race. Let me tell you what, if you can be happy with one horse in here, somebody please tell me who that horse is.
Well, I'm just going to try to hit some odds. There's a couple I like, and yeah, it's tougher than tough. But if they're both in the double digits, which I think they will be, I'm going to look for Wes Welker, Wesley Ward's undrafted. You know, I've long been a friend of his. I think he needed his last race, his first in America recently, and I expect him to run a big race. And I'm looking for my other long shot. There she is, Free as a Bird. She's actually 15th on the list, so she's not in yet. But with a horse or two first preference as elsewhere, I imagine Free as a Bird will get in. And I think the filly might be good enough to beat the boys. It's happened recently with Misdirection. Free as a Bird is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and David Simcox.
That's the turf sprint.
Yeah, David Simcox got another one of his in the turf sprint with Casper Netscher, who just won last weekend in Canada. Yes, one of Simcox's many winners and one of the Euros in Canada. Okay, that's the turf sprint. Let's jump into the most unknown quantity of the Breeders' Cup, and that's these two juvenile turf races. Let's start with the boys, Matt. Yeah, 7 Europeans in the main field for this one. Aidan O'Brien's got 2. He's won the race in 2011 and 2012. This is I think a race where, again, the Euros might have an edge. I'm with you. And looking at these two races, I see one thing jump out at me right away. The Americans are inexperienced. The Europeans, generally speaking, on average, have a lot more experience. I think that goes a long way to who's going to win this race. They've had success lately, and I look for that success to be repeated here. You mentioned Aidan O'Brien's pair, the Great War Envoy. There's a number of other Euros that I could see winning here. Maybe we have a better chance in this one than the filly and mare turf. Maybe not. Euros look tough to me, though. And if we look at the juvenile fillies, there's some maybe ones that jump out a little bit more on the home side. But again, I think the Euros are strong. Matt, let's get into the juvenile fillies turf. And again, I think the Americans have a few in here that might have some solid form, but the Euros could be tough again. Yeah, I think so. But my feeling is we've got a little bit of a better chance in here. There's Lady Eli, who's run 2 good races, and Chad Brown's got 2 in here. One is American-based, but he's also got a first time North America in here also, and he's pretty tough on that angle sometimes also.
Yeah, we should talk about Lady Eli a little bit, because her 2 races I think were even better than it looked on paper. At Saratoga, she had all sorts of trouble and still won. And then in the stakes race there, the Miss Grillo, she just blew the doors off the horses the last 100 yards. So Lady Eli, she reminds me a little bit of Winter Memories, and I don't know how well that's going to translate at Santa Anita. One of the Euros that I was looking at that looks really good to me is Qualify, and wouldn't you know, it's another Aidan O'Brien filly.
Yeah, no surprise on that. Aidan O'Brien, he's got 9 horses entered in the Breeders' Cup this year, so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of year he has.
Matt, I think we did it. I think we went through all 13 Breeders' Cup races, if not just briefly. So well done, sir. I appreciate all the help with that. It's fun, isn't it? There's nothing better than handicapping the Breeders' Cup. How about a parting shot, Matt? You want to go first today?
Sure, I'm going to continue with what you just said. My parting shots are going to just be a couple things that I'm thinking about for the Breeders' Cup with the kind of fields that we talked about, with the number of horses entered and the quality of some of these fields. I think if you're thinking about playing pick 4s and pick 5s and even in some trifectas, you got to be prepared to spread big, and sometimes I think you got to be prepared to hit the all button and hope for the magic of the all button and getting a big one in there. That means you're going to have to be willing to spend some money to take a chance if you want to hit one of those super big tickets that sure seem like they're going to happen this year at the Breeders' Cup. And the other thing that I want to say to people is, now you start hearing all the clockers, TVG, Twitter, everywhere the clockers talking about horses. For me, I try not to listen too much about what they say. I'm not saying those guys aren't good, because they are. But if you start listening to all that stuff, it's just going to make it even more difficult. The only thing I listen to is when a whole bunch of clockers agree that a horse really looks bad. Then I'll listen to it. Otherwise, I do my handicapping. That's my parting shot as we get ready to pack our bags and head to California. How about you, Brian?
Good thoughts, Matt. I think there's money to be won at the Breeders' Cup, and you got to be willing to go after it a little bit if you want to really hit the big score. And yeah, stick with your convictions. I'm pretty good at this. You're very good at this. A lot of our viewers are extremely good handicappers. Don't let people talk you off a winner. My quick parting shot is Close Hatches. I really think she's one of the singles of the event for me this year. People are going to be down on her a little bit. I don't expect her to be favored. I think they're going to jump on Untappable, the 3-year-old, because of the last race of each. A friend of mine, Jason Mangrum, reminded me that of Mott's 5 distaff winners, only 1 of the 5 came into the Breeders' Cup off a win. So I think Close Hatches he's going to have her geared back up. She ran a good race last year. I see her winning the Breeders' Cup distaff this year.
This is typical of Bill Mott. His horse is not necessarily firing, running their A game, and then coming back the next time and lighten up the board.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us once again on Horse Center. You can follow us on Horse Racing Nation and Derby Wars, and on Twitter, it's HR_Nation. Derby Wars, follow us on Twitter. Next week, Horse Center goes live. We'll be live on location at Santa Anita. Join us again then. I think it's time that we say goodnight, Matt. We did it for the love of thoroughbred horse racing.